The morning sun glared over the white marble mansion, where silence had long been broken by the screams of a little boy. Ethan, the only son of billionaire Richard Hale, had been diagnosed with severe autism at the age of 3. He was 8 now, but his world was one of confusion and sounds that frightened him, faces that overwhelmed him, and routines that anchored him. But that morning, even his anchors were gone. The housekeeper had quit the night before after Ethan's uncontrollable outburst shattered a vase worth more than her year's salary. Richard, exhausted and desperate, had stopped counting how many nannies and caretakers had left. He had money, more than he could ever spend, but he couldn't buy peace for his child. When the new maid arrived, no one noticed her car, old, scratched, and small, pulling into the grand driveway. Her name was Clara Evans, and unlike the others, she didn't come through an agency. She came with a handwritten note from an old friend of Richard's late wife. She was quiet, dressed simply, and her eyes spoke more warmth than her resume ever could. The head butler, Mr. Thompson, doubted her from the start. "You won't last a day," he whispered as she entered the mansion. Clara just smiled. "Let's see," she replied gently. Moments later, the first scream shook the air. Ethan was on the floor, clutching his ears, crying uncontrollably, and hitting his head against the soft carpet. Clara froze for a moment, not out of fear, but from heartbreak. She'd seen this before, not in luxury homes, but in her past, where her younger brother had been the same way. Slowly, she knelt down. The other maids backed away, whispering that she was foolish to go near him. But Clara didn't speak. She just sat beside Ethan quietly, her presence steady, her breathing calm. At first, Ethan screamed louder, sensing a stranger nearby. But Clara began humming, a soft, rhythmic lullaby. It was the same song she used to sing to her brother whenever he felt trapped in his world. Her voice was calm, pure, and oddly steady despite the chaos. Richard, who had come downstairs at the sound of his son's cries, froze at the doorway. He had seen many professionals, therapists, and caretakers. None had dared sit so close when Ethan was in that state. Ethan's breathing slowed. His cries softened. His little body, trembling and sweating, leaned toward the sound. Clara didn't touch him. She just kept humming, letting him choose when to come closer. Within minutes, the impossible happened. Ethan rested his head on her lap, exhausted but calm. The room, once filled with screams, fell silent. Richard stepped forward, stunned. "How did you do that?" he whispered. Clara looked up, her eyes filled with quiet compassion. "Sometimes," she said softly, "you don't fix a storm by shouting at it. You wait until it's ready to rest." For the first time in years, Richard didn't know what to say. That night, Clara stayed late, even after the other staff had gone. She tidied Ethan's toys, noticed patterns in his behavior, and whispered gentle reassurances when he stirred awake. She wasn't trained by degrees, she was trained by love and loss. Every action she took was intentional, patient, and kind. She knew Ethan's world was fragile, and she didn't try to drag him into hers. Instead, she stepped into his. Over the next few days, small miracles began to happen. Ethan stopped pushing her away. He began following her hums down the hallway, eating with her nearby, and sitting quietly during his meltdowns. Richard watched with disbelief. This simple maid had accomplished more in 3 days than all his hired experts had in years. But he couldn't understand why. What made her different? One evening, he asked her directly. "Clara," he said, "you're not just a maid, are you?" She smiled faintly. "I was," she said, looking down. "Until life taught me that the smallest hearts sometimes need the biggest patience. My brother was like Ethan. I lost him when I couldn't understand his world in time. I won't make that mistake again." The words hit Richard deep. He turned to look at his son, who was now quietly drawing beside Clara. For the first time in years, the boy wasn't screaming, breaking, or hiding. He was peaceful, fragile, but peaceful. And in that moment, Richard realized that wealth couldn't heal pain. But love could.